Hello, once again, it's story time. Before we go into today's video, I want to take a moment to give a big shout out to my producer, director, video editor, as well as the CEO of Slime Clothing. This you see me putting on is from Slime Clothing. You will find more details about him in the description below. If this is your first time of coming across this channel, please click on the subscribe button and give the like button a thumbs up. That said, let's get into today's story. On a particularly cool afternoon, Mr. Anderson comes back from work. Having acquired a large portion of land, says to his kids, "Let's go chop down some trees." All 6 children, only 2 miss it out with Mr. Anderson to actually go chop down some trees. No one finds any problem with this, and the day goes on just fine, despite the fact that the work would have been a whole lot easier if all 6 children had gone out with Mr. Anderson. Why did the other 4 not go out with Mr. Anderson? Well, your guess is as good as mine. After clearing out half of the land, Mr. Anderson decides he will go into livestock farming, but he didn't have enough money to pay for the manpower that would set up the farm, as well as purchase the livestock. So he and his 2 sons go about setting up the farm all by themselves, bit by bit. Eventually, they succeeded in setting up the farm, and Mr. Anderson bought the livestock with all the capital he had. Mr. Anderson wanted to start his own family business, but knew he was still very far from where he wanted to be. To support his business, he continued his 9-to-5 job and decided to put one of his sons in charge of everyday running of the business as the manager, and the other son he put in charge of the finances as the chief financial officer. Mr. Anderson, in effect, would be accused of being gender biased because he had daughters who were also capable of handling those positions. And moreover, his first 2 children so happened to be girls. Mr. Anderson was faced with the difficult task of finding a way to please both parties, because for one thing, he didn't want his sons who had worked so hard for him to end up feeling disappointed or betrayed, and also he was a staunch advocate of gender equality. He never anticipated that his decision would be judged as being gender biased, so it was a difficult situation for him, but in the end, he was able to come up with a perfect solution. He said to his 4 daughters, "Since half of the land is still untouched, let's go chop down the trees and start up a new business, or build an extension of the already existing one where you can be in charge." 3 of the daughters, with the exception of one, object. They argue that the female gender isn't designed to perform difficult tasks such as the felling of trees, because no one would actually love to look like this, which to a big extent I think is true. The one daughter who did not object would go on to build a very successful business empire with her father, while the other 3 that objected will spend the rest of their days distant from their, in quotes, gender biased father as gender equality activists. What makes gender equality so important that they decided to become gender equality activists? First, let us be clear about what gender equality hopes to achieve. The overall objective of gender equality is to create a society in which women and men enjoy the same opportunities, rights, and obligations in all spheres of life. In that vein, gender equality will be achieved when women, men, girls, and boys have equal rights, conditions, opportunities, and the power to shape their own lives and contribute to the development of the society. It is very important that gender equality be achieved because first, it prevents violence against women and girls. It's also essential for economic growth because if the percentage of the female workforce is as high as the percentage of the male workforce, there will definitely be an increased labor force bringing about more output and hence an increased economic growth in the world all over. So the 3 sisters deciding to become gender equality activists was actually a good thing. But there is one little problem. Many gender equality activists are fighting for all the wrong reasons. The story you listened to at the beginning of this video is a fictional tale of 3 sisters who were left out of difficult tasks because of their perceived limitations, enjoys being left out of difficult tasks, who don't fancy performing difficult tasks, but wishes to enjoy the same rights and privileges with someone who does. And the 4th sister who is willing to go beyond her perceived limitations, go shoulder to shoulder with her male counterparts and earn the right to enjoy equal privileges. Of course, it's a fictional tale, so you might want to argue about the possibilities of such thing ever happening. But you see, I do in fact have a real life case study. On the 24th of February 2022, Vladimir Putin's led Russia launched an attack on Ukraine, and on the 25th of the same month, that is just a day after, News emerged that a ban has been placed on all men in Ukraine between the ages of 18 to 60 from leaving the country. Women and children were allowed to leave, but men were to stay back and fight for their country. No gender equality activists had an objection to this. No gender equality activists came out to say it was wrong of the Ukrainian government to exclude women from fighting, while their male counterparts were to remain behind and fight. Had it been the Ukrainian government created a program that was to benefit its citizens, but limited it to just men between the ages of 18 to 60, would the gender equality activists have been so quiet? Does gender equality only matter when there are benefits attached and not when there are sacrifices to be made? A supposed feminist once made a post about a tribe where only women are allowed to rule, and I will swear, I love to see it. So my question is, isn't that exactly what gender equality is trying to bring an end to? This points to the underlying fact that so many so-called gender equality activists do not really know what gender equality entails. And this is one of the reasons why we might never be able to achieve gender equality, because they seem to be fighting for a gender-biased system that goes in favor of the female gender. Another reason why we might never be able to achieve gender equality, as earlier explained, is that if gender equality only matters when there are benefits attached and not when there are sacrifices to be made, then we can never say we have achieved gender equality. An undeniable fact is that in order for the human society to thrive, gender equality is required. Therefore, when we see people just like the fourth daughter, who did her best to go beyond her perceived limitations and make a name for herself, may we acknowledge their efforts and give them the reward that they deserve, not minding the gender. As we all work together to achieve this, may our drive be love and fairness for humanity as a whole and not just a particular gender. Thanks for watching.